Well, good morning everyone and welcome to the show. Fernando's running late. He had an appointment. So let's just pretend we say hi. Hi, hola, yeah, okay. Anyways, today we have a Corvette. That's right, the American classic, that old guy muscle car. If you're a young guy and have one of these, it's okay. It's all right. But how young are you really? This guy is filled with all kinds of fun and excitement as far as what that customer has done to it. Let's take a look, shall we? He has pinstriping on the hood, pinstriping around the door handles, a custom armrest cover with red accent. He brought us both tops. Why? He has the tail end all dressed up with the cool light covers with the logos and more pinstriping and chrome here and chrome next to the license plate and chrome tips and a cool Corvette logo on the back. This car is straight pimpin'. However, one thing that has been neglected this whole time is the radio. It's still got the factory radio. Not only that, it has that original factory Bose stereo. There's nothing here. There's nothing, ugh. He's had this car parked for about a month, hasn't driven it. He just got back into it and he was like, man, I'm tired of the way this thing sounds. I'm ready for an upgrade. He doesn't want to do anything crazy, which is perfectly cool. He doesn't want to mess with any of the factory parts, meaning he just wants everything to be hidden. He wants to keep the factory look on the dash. He doesn't want to go with the new double din. He's like, I just want it to sound better, not break the bank. I was like, no problem. We got the perfect system for you. Let's take a look at what we're gonna do to this. First up, we're gonna do this guy. This is the Kenwood X-Line KMMX503. And what makes this guy unique is it is a mechless radio, meaning there's no mechanism in it, no CD player. It's a short chassis. Look at that, yeah. Which is great because there was never a lot of room behind the dash in these Corvettes. So this will definitely make installation a dream come true. Make that fit in the dash, the old school BKGM K434, which is just a universal GM kit. We can countersink this thing all the way, so that'll be nice. Of course, standard GM harness and antenna adapter. You can find all your parts at pack-audio.com or metroonline.com. But the big thing about this guy is that it has a USB here on the front, an aux jack, and of course the all-important Bluetooth for phone calls and streaming. He is into streaming XM, Spotify. He's like, I just want a radio I can do that on. I was like, no problem, we got that. And we're not just doing a radio, we're actually doing everything. We're going with a 5-channel amplifier to deliver the maximum with what we're doing. And for that, we chose the Exelon X802.5 5-channel amplifier. One of the reasons why we picked this amplifier is its size. This guy here, though compact in size, still gonna give us the 50 watts by 4 and 500 watts to our subwoofer. As far as our subwoofers goes, we're gonna go with a nice down-firing Kicker Comp RT box. It fits right in front of the top that was in the trunk of the car. Snug right in there, perfect. It's up close to him, so it'll give him a ton of bass. Most of the time when we're talking about a Corvette, we're gonna put the subwoofer in this location here. Fit a shell mount woofer, but he's used to having bigger bass, and my thought was by putting that woofer up closer to his head, it'll be nice and loud and feel good. This will also free up this space here. We can mount the amplifier down here on a nice flush panel, do the wiring nice and pretty. It'll look good. For the front doors, to replace those factory Bose 7, 8-inch speakers, we're gonna go with a set of 6x9 Exelons. Depth is not a big concern for us with these. We have room. We're gonna go with these guys right here and get tons of mid bass out of those front doors. Those are subwoofers from the factory. I wanna keep that strong mid bass up front. These guys have a ton of it. These will go right in and sound great. Plus it's gonna allow us to move that tweeter down. Once we get the door off, we'll show you what we're dealing with. We'll get that tweeter down from up high with the door panel covering it, so we can actually get some sound out of the front of the car, not just that bland, flat sound that it has. And of course, no car would be complete without rear fill. For this, we're gonna try to fit these 5 1/4s in there. It's a 6-inch, but it's real shallow and tight, and yeah. So this is my goal, is to try to get these guys into the rear. As I said at the beginning, he's an older gentleman. He's used to driving in cars that have rear sound. So there's no reason to not keep him happy by saying, no, let's just put him a bunch of front. He's not gonna like that. He's used to having 3 1/2s in the front, 6x9s in the rear, old school style. That's how he grew up. That's how he likes it. So we're gonna put these these. And the nice thing with these, for those of you that aren't familiar with Corvettes, this is the rear speaker location here and here. So they don't have to be giant, they don't have to be huge, but they will give you, of course, plenty of rear fill from the seated position. Now I know a lot of you aren't into that and you'll freak out, but like I said, it's the customer's car and you have to design the system for the customer. It's not my car, all right? If he wants some rear fill, he gets some rear fill. But that's the list of goodies we're gonna put in it. So next, start getting this car apart more so than it already is and figure out where everything's gonna go, figure out what kind of brackets we have to make and the whatnot. Really, the question is, we need to get the doors off because I need to figure out what I'm gonna do with that bracket there if I already have one made that will work, or if I need to make a second one, and also to get that rear 6.5 out to make sure that the 5.25 are gonna fit. That's why I didn't open them, because if they're not gonna go in there, I have to go grab something else. And I don't wanna have to rebox them and stuff like that. Are you ready? For me, I need to do a little exploratory surgery, and I need to get into this area down here and get this side of the car apart. We know what the radio looks like behind there. Fernando, of course, is going to be working over here on this door panel first, then he's going to move into the back area and get that 5.25 out for me. But I need to get down here, get to the factory amplifier. We need to see what kind of plugs we need. There's lots of room, just exploratory. Let's hit it. Well, I had thought the Bose amp was down here, but that might be on a different year, because I know there is one that has it here, but that's okay. I'm gonna keep going, moving along the side here, getting the rest of those panels apart. Now, after sitting here and taking this apart, thinking about it for a minute, where the amplifier is finally dawned on me in this one, because it's been a minute. This one actually used a two-part system. The factory radio powered the four corners, meaning the two in the front and these two in the back, and then there was an external little amplifier that powers the subwoofers in the door. I forgot all about that. However, we do have the speakers out. The other unique thing about this car is if you want to get this panel out, which we don't need to, we just need to be able to run wire behind it. But to get this panel out, you have to remove the strut in order to do that, because it goes through the panel, which was a real stupid design for sure. But hey, you know, that's what happens. Looking at the car, he has clearly put some thermal treatment in here, which is kind of nice. Probably helped kill some of the road noise that everyone loves that these cars have, but I figured that was the reason why you buy them. It looks like Fernando's got the door off, so let's take a look at that too. Oh, one other thing, if you are just looking to replace the speakers, the grill just pops off. You don't have to take any of this out to get to it. We were taking it off so we could run wires.
Before you start removing the door panel, just look around and see if you can find those kind of clips, like right here and the door handle behind this door, and just grab you pry tool. And we have Torx behind this panel. We're gonna grab our skinny panel tool, then you grab the plastic one. Under the door panel we have the reflector light. Carefully pry it out. It has two clips in here, metal clip in the bottom. We have a 10mm in the bottom side. We have one main clip. Just unplug it and the door panel is free. Actually, you don't even have to take the 10mm. It's underneath right here. To remove the speaker, we have 7mm.
This is what this looks like. It kind of looks like a round head with a top hat, but that's the hole that we're going to be dealing with. The 6x9 will fit. You do have to trim a little bit here and here to get it to fit, which is fine. But let's head over to the bench and we'll take a look at the actual speakers that we took out. This is our factory speaker. It has this standard Bose magnet up front, spider in the back, real thin, which is funny because there's tons of room in that door. Hey, whatever. Then you have this little 4-inch that sits up here in the top. Now the way this sits in the door, if you remember the door panel, that 4-inch just gets covered totally by the door panel. With this being the age that it is, in the past we have made an adapter for it. As you can see, it lines up perfect. How I made the adapter was pull this out, turn this upside down, mount it onto a piece of plastic, and take it over the router and just ride the bearing around it and drill the holes, and you end up with this. This is a 6x9 adapter that we've used. This is going to sit just like this on here as far as we're gonna cut this shape out of here. That'll take this 6x9 and mount it down nice and low so that this area here that's covered by the door panel, well, who cares? We'll have our tweeter right in the center of that grill where it'll come through and give us a nice loud sound. We'll router 2 of these out a 1/2 inch because it is a bigger panel and we don't want it to flex. Once we've routed those out, we'll attach these. You know what? You're gonna see us do it, so don't worry about it. I'll just show you step by step as we go through it. For the rear, we have this 6-inch here. It is fairly deep. The problem is the way this mounts in. There is a panel that comes in right here, so this just fits in perfectly snug. For the rear, we're gonna be using the Kenwood Exelon KFC X174s. Now inside the box with the 174s, it does come with these universal adapters here, and all of these have grills in them. We have a pretty beefy size magnet on the back, and all of the Exelons are gonna have this cloth tweeter inside of them. And when comparing it to the factory, clearly has a bigger magnet. Depth-wise is about the same. Actually, this is a little deeper than this one, the way it's built. The whole pattern lines up perfect. This is gonna be a perfect speaker in that rear location. The first step to making these is to cut out 2 pieces a 1/2 inch, about 1 inch longer and 1 inch wider than this shape right here. The next step is to tape both pieces together using some Mobile Solutions template tape, then grabbing the template and taping that on top of our 2 pieces to be cut out.
Now that we're done drilling the holes, we're gonna separate the template. Next step is put the 6x9 template. After you're using the router, unlock it and roll the bit down so it's no accidents.
These 2 holes here are part of what hold the 4-inch in place, and the reason why I left them on there is because in previous versions of this we've actually mounted external crossovers up here, and I've kept those on for additional screw points, like if I'm going to put a 6-inch down here or an 8-inch or something like that. What we have to remove are these 2 pieces right here and here, and that will allow the 6x9 to go in with no issue. There's a screw here. We'll put foam all across the back of this, and that'll pull it into this door nice and tight. This door panel is made out of fiberglass. You're cutting it, be careful. I suggest putting some blue tape over here and here to try to minimize the amount of cracks or dust and all that. Put a mask on so you don't breathe in the dust that's going to be cut from this, because it is bad for you. Grab the bracket, put it in place, test fit your 6x9. Fits perfect. We're gonna put some foam on the back of this. There's already foam on the back of the speakers. That one. And all we have to do is screw it back into place. But there is a trick to the wiring. On the plug itself, this orange one, there is a bunch of wires going into it. Inside this box right here is the factory amplifier for the system. That factory amplifier only powers this guy right here. It doesn't power this. On the plug we have a bunch of black wires with white stripes and orange wires. These are the power and ground for the amplifier. There's a solid black wire which is the remote turn on, and then there is these tan and gray wires here. There's 2 tans and 1 gray. The tan, one of them, is going to be the positive and the gray is going to be the negative. So we have to hook up to these 2 wires here. Make sure we grab the right ones. We will be pulling the the radio out, we can continuity test between the radio and the door. That means while Fernando is finishing prepping these and getting them ready, I'm going to pull out the radio so that he'll be able to continuity test the right wires and get this thing hooked up. Sound like a plan?
It sounds like a plan.
Awesome. There you go. To get this radio out, we start back here. Start by removing the arm pad. It has 4 Phillips screws in it that are very fragile. You can use a drill to get them out, just go slow, but definitely don't use a drill to put them back in. What happens is these little silver things here, these are posts, and the posts will just twist right off and break. The fact that those are all still in place is quite impressive. Remove the traction control panel, just lifts up and unplugs. Pull your emergency brake back, reach in and unplug the cigarette lighter. There's 2 10mm bolts here, and there's also 2 back here that will shift this whole panel back and make getting it out a little bit easier. Next to the steering wheel, there is a little air cover here that's missing in this one. That'll come off. And behind it is a T15 torque screw. And there's also one in where the ashtray is next to the cigarette lighter. Then behind the ashtray or pouring tray is a third one. Pull this pad and shift it all the way back. Gently pull up on the dash. Putting the gear shifter all the way back will also help. The only thing plugged into this is the cigarette lighter. Once that's unplugged, the whole piece will come out. Keep in mind that when you're doing this, the keys have to pass through this hole. So if there's a bunch of crap on the keychain, make sure you remove it. The radio just has 2 7mm holding it in place. Wiggle it a little bit and pull it free. With the radio out of the dash, we can move on to do some testing. The big plug here that has the 2 colors on it is the harness we're after. Passenger is going to be light green, dark green for positive and negative. If we tone those, we should hear that top 4-inch play through here. And we do. That leaves that tan and gray wire. There's no speaker in this door. We're going to continuity test to see which tan out of the 2 is the one that we want. A continuity test is the little wavy sign here. And what that does is when the 2 leads touch, makes a beeping sound. We'll put our first probe on the tan. We'll come over to the door and test over here. So on the outside of the door, the far corner is a tan, which is right above the gray, located right here. These are our 2 signal wires that are gonna now need to be hooked up to our 6x9, bypassing that factory amplifier. Grab the factory harness and plug it in, and look on the other side, you'll see where the wire colors translate out. So the gray and the tan match up with our white with a black stripe and white. This is the same for every car. However, manufacturers have gotten a little tricky, and these speaker wires don't match all the way through now. So though on older cars this is a great way to see what is positive and negative, on newer cars not so much, but you can always do the continuity test. One thing to note on this, the red wire here, the accessory, that doesn't exist in this plug. It just has constant 12 volts, the amplified antenna, an illumination, and a ground, but no accessory wire. In these cars, you have to go out and find your own accessory. Or, if you are gonna be integrating into the factory amplifier, Metra does make a harness now that will tap into the data bus in this old car and give you an accessory.
Speaker is mounted in place. Let's go and put it on. Speaker number 1 is done. Let's go and put the door panel back together. This is done. Let's jump to another one.
The 5.25 will fit in here, no issues. But I'm really curious if the 6.5 will fit. That's what's kind of racking through my brain. I'm gonna grab a set of 6.5s just to make sure, because that would suck if they'd fit and I went through the problem of having to make all these and I didn't need to. And it's a perfect fit. Awesome. So that means we don't have to make a bracket to fit the 5 1/4 in place, which is spectacular. Now that we have a plan for this and we know the speaker will fit, there's no reason to just not get the speaker in place and get something checked off the list. This is an old school GM. It uses standard old school GM colors. So we have a dark blue and a light blue on this side. Dark blue is going to be positive, light blue is going to be negative. On the other side, there's going to be a brown and a yellow. The brown is positive. We've also put some foam on the back of the speaker so that when it screws into this plastic bucket here, it's resting on that and not plastic. That way we don't get any rattles or anything like that. We are going to change out the screws to a smaller head Phillips as opposed to the bigger head 7mm that was in there. The reason we're doing that is for the basket on these. That bigger head will not fit. One done, one to go. I'm not gonna put the grill back on this yet because we still have a bunch of wiring to run and I wanna make sure that it doesn't drop down and get in the way of the speaker. This is a universal dash kit, which means it fits a ton of General Motors cars. They've been making this dash kit forever. I mean, I can't even list them all. There's a ton of parts, but really what we want is this one here that's nice and flush. They make this one that, oh, these are the good old days. One of the reasons I wanted to go with the short chassis was to avoid having to go with something like this or something like this that sticks out. I prefer to go with this nice flat one. What they give you are these here. These allow you to go into all these cars, but finding the two that you need, well, that can be a little bit more interesting. To do that, the old practice is grab the radio and we'll match up which ones we think we need, which I think are these two here in the middle. They snap into place, and if we set them over the top of each other, they line up pretty good. The final test will be just to take it into the car and set it and see if it goes and lines up with the screw holes. It lines right up with the dash. There's a nub here and a nub here. Screw, screw. Goes in nice and tight. As you can see, there's this metal piece right here. If we were doing a longer radio, we would have to cut that out of the way to make room for that. And if you do a double din, you have to cut the whole bracket out altogether and lower the whole radio down. That's right, if you didn't know, you can actually put a double din in one of these. Metra has a dash kit for this in order to do that, and we have done a video showing you how to do it. Grab our mounting sleeve. When installing your sleeve, it has all these little tabs that push up on them. Don't go crazy, you don't need 100 tabs to hold it in place. Just find the ones that overlap the plastic and move those out so that the radio will mount in nice and securely. That's all you have to do. Slide the radio into place. You have two looks that you could go with. This look here where the radio sits inside of the trim bezel, or you could leave this on and go for, you know, the whole bigger look. Personally, I kind of like this look better. I'm gonna leave it like that. But I will put this in the box in case they change their mind. Looking at the back of the car here, it's gonna be really tight with the wiring. There is a gap here and here. There is, if I lift my hand underneath this part here, this piece, there is room to bring the wire up. Looking at it, I think this is going to be the best place for it. My thought is to build an L-shaped amp rack, meaning have the amp rack go all the way from the front here, back, and then up, and run the wiring up this way, and then it'll go off into the sides of the car like it needs to, and look pretty nice doing it, because we'll be able to zip tie it all into place. And then when he looks in here, it'll see the nice amp, and we can cover it all up and you won't even know it's there. And this is a bigger area, so you'll have more airflow than off to one of these little side pockets. With that in mind, I'm gonna get a tape measure, take some measurements, and of course, cut some plastic. I think a piece 15 by 21 will get me started and mount the amplifier right there. Let's head over to the saw. What I need to do now is figure out where my bend needs to be so that this will sit flat and L up into the back of the car. 7 inches is my bend point. What I'm gonna do is take this over to the table saw. I'm gonna put a slight score mark in here so I know where to bend it. Just like that. It's not even a 32nd of an inch. Just gives me a good guideline. The other thing I need to do is round these corners here and here. Where this is gonna sit, those are round. Like that. Just go back and forth several times, heating it up as you go, and eventually it will get hot enough to bend. Once it's heated up, we need a 90-degree angle bent. This corner makes a great place for it. I'm just gonna hold it in place until it gets cool enough to take it into the car and properly position to see if it works. That's what she looks like. Plan is to run the wire up this way, tuck it in behind this panel here, have it come up this. I'm gonna put some spacers on the amplifier just to lift it up a ½ inch so it's not sitting on there. That'll give me a little bit more room to get in here to adjust the crossovers, and also a little bit of breathing room for these vents that are on the end of the amplifier. Need to take it over to the bench, make all that wiring happen. Just, you know, real quick like. The amp rack is finished. It is gonna sit like this, so when you look into the car, it's gonna look this way. Up the back wall is where all the wires are gonna run. You have your subwire here, you have your power and ground. For this install, we're using Stinger marine wire, so we have an equal length power and ground. This is a fiberglass car. It's just much easier to run directly up to the battery than have to deal with trying to find a ground that's reliable somewhere in this car. Our speed wire is running along here. This will take us up into the dash, along with our 6-channel RCA. It's all zip tied in place. I'm gonna go drop this into the car now.
The next step I'm going to do is remove the battery so I can make my hole. The first thing I did that was cover this chrome fuse panel that he has, and on top of that I'm going to put this piece of carpet. In the other side of the grommet we have this rubber ring that you gotta remove so you can have access and you can make your hole, and then on top of that we're gonna cut it a little bit so we can run our wire and install it back in place.
Over here in the corner, they have this stuff here like we saw. I had to tape our wire to it and hold it all in place, and it goes up and around. And Fernando's grabbing it right now where it comes down out from behind this panel where the factory wiring is, up in here. And it'll just go along the floor and then out to where he was working on the fuse holder.
Now let's pull the power wire. Seal the hole. The other part is for the inside, and install the rubber grommet. Replace these factory bolts from the battery. And the reason why we replace it is because this is too short. So when we add a second terminal, even ground or power, they not fit in well. For that, we're using these terminals, the GM bat.
And it was just informed me that he finished the fuse holder and got everything connected in the hood. It's looking terrific. The original thought process, he was going to move the fuse holder into this area here, but because this gentleman likes to put tape on the top battery for all his maintenance, he figured that would probably be a bad idea, so he went with it mounted over here. The nice thing about these fuse holders is they do unclip like this. You can get to that factory bolt, pull this whole assembly out, and you're none the wiser. And of course, clip it back in when you're done. That takes us to another thing we can check off the list. The hood, we can close it, we're done. That's a good feeling, by the way, when you're working on a car, when you can actually close the hood. Ah, it feels so nice. Ah, little click there, walk around to the other side. Listen for the click. Ooh, second click. Hood is closed. We're that much closer to being done with this thing. Yes. The second part of this is going to be getting the RCA and the speed wire up along this same side and into the dash. Naturally, that'll be just as fun. Not really. Speaker wires and RCA are run the same way up that side and are waiting right there to be ran the rest of the way. With that taken care of, we got a lot of parts that are chilling out on our blanket here, and they don't need to be now that the wires ran. I'm gonna put some of the car back together that can go back together just to free up some space in the install bay. Back of the car is back together and looking fabulous. We have the box sitting in place. This top also has to go back in. The box sits perfectly between that whole area. We're gonna wait, of course, till we're done because we have to tune this first. But with the back panel back in, you can see how the idea of the wire coming up and just disappearing worked out pretty well. This side of the car is fully back together. Fernando is just buttoning up the fuse underneath the hood. And what we got left is this hole in the dash here and getting these wires into said hole. We've already done the dash kit, but we haven't done anything yet with the wiring, and we need to get this wired up to our Kenwood harness. And also we need to get that dash piece out there. That's where that wire is going to run up in, and that's also where we're going to grab our accessory power for the radio. It's hidden right in there. There's a pink wire which is ignition, and there's a brown wire that's an accessory. We're going to go for the accessory and not the ignition. Now it seems subtle, but there is a difference between the two. Ignition is through crank, accessory shuts off through crank. We'll grab our wire there, we'll put a fuse on it there too, but let's head back over to the bench and we'll talk about the harness and get that all squared away. Now earlier we ran a tone through the speakers to test them to see if they went up behind the radio. That was these wires here. We've ran speed wire out of the Kenwood amplifier, and that is going to be coming up front to these wires. What I like to do is drop in a remote turn on to these and then separate them off into their own bundle. Like this, so now the speed wire will just attach to here. Then I will run it up this side with these wires and connect it to my Kenwood plug. We also said earlier that this car does not have an accessory. If it doesn't have it, it comes out of the harness. That way there's no confusion later. Because the harness will need an accessory somewhere, I'm going to group that in just like the remote turn on with these wires and tape those off by themselves as well. For the accessory connection, we're going to use our bullet connectors that we typically use for our speakers, and you have a female end and a male end. The female end has to go towards the car because that's the one that's going to have power on it, and as you can see, it's fully insulated. The male end is going to connect to our harness here because it is not fully insulated, and the reason for that is if we disconnect this for whatever reason and pull out this harness, if it were to have this end on it and tap to any of that metal that's in the dash, it would blow our fuse. This way we're totally secure. Some red heat shrink on it so we know what wire it is. On the Kenwood harness of our 8 speaker wires that we won't be using, a steering wheel control wire that we won't be using, which is the blue with a yellow stripe, don't get it confused for blue with white, and a brown wire which is a cellular phone mute. None of these wires are going to be used in this installation. We'll isolate those off, cap them off. We don't want to leave them just like this in the dash. As you saw earlier, there is a lot of metal in that dash that these can touch and bad things could happen. That leaves us just 4 wires on this side, a yellow, a black, a red, and a blue with a white stripe. Black is ground, yellow is constant 12 volts, red as accessory, and blue is remote turn on. Those wires will get connected to these wires, and we can get this harness into the car so we can wire up our speed wire. And after a couple minutes with a soldering gun, we have our harness complete. These are all shielded, butt connected, and zip tied into a bundle. This is ready to get attached to the speed wire. I'm going to put a couple zip ties on here to finish this off so this just isn't flying around in the dash going crazy. The next assignment I need to do is this guy. This is a fuse holder that is going to connect to the accessory wire that we're going to be running. I just need to get it prepped and ready for Fernando. He's hanging out down in the dash right now, and it's all set. I'm going to hand this over to him. We have our fuse in place. We have about 18 inches of accessory wire, which should be plenty. This side is going to tap into the car. This side will run up behind our radio. We'll wait to put the end on it just in case we need this extra amount. Alright, so that's some kind of accessory. Start the car. Perfect. So when he started the car, the voltage dipped away. That's what we want. It's that big brown wire down in there. We'll tap our fuse into that, run it the short distance up to here, and our radio will turn on and off with the key. What are we doing, you might ask? Well, everything is running to the dash. We have the accessory hooked up, we have the remote hooked up, and before we connect the speakers behind the radio, it makes sense to do our distortion detecting right now. Back at the amplifier, as you saw, the wires are really tight, and to unscrew them would be really, really hard. In lieu of that, just don't connect them behind the radio, do your DD1 now, or your distortion detecting, or your oscilloscope, whatever it is you're gonna do, before you connect the wires up behind the radio, because you don't want to have them connected to do your distortion detecting. You don't play a 0 dB, 1000 hertz test tone or 40 hertz test tone through your speakers. You'll blow them. Playing the 1000 hertz 0 dB track first, and as you can see, we're getting distortion, we're getting signal. Start turning it down one at a time. Oh, right there. Where you at?
Oh wow, 34.
34 it is. Next, we're gonna play a 0 dB 40 hertz test tone and check the subwoofer output. We're gonna leave the volume at 34. And we have no distortion, so we'll just leave the volume at 34. Play a -5 dB 1000 hertz test track and set the gains for the front and rear. As we slowly turn it up, we get distortion. We'll turn it back down until the red light goes away, red light goes away. All right, there's the front. All right, we'll turn up the rears. For the rears, we're probably going to end up turning them down. We just want to know what the maximum level they can play at. I mean, they're only 12 inches from his head, and as much as he likes rear fill, I'm pretty sure he doesn't want them as loud as the fronts are, so we'll turn them down. But you want to use the distortion detector to figure out what your max level is all the way across, and then you can turn down from there. Next, we're going to set the subwoofer. For that, we're going to turn the subwoofer level up on the radio, and we're going to play a -10 dB track for the sub. That way we'll have plenty of control with it, and it's already set to its maximum output coming from the radio. I personally like a little bit of punchy sound in my bass, so I'm going to be adjusting the bass boost and the gain at the same time, because if you adjust them separately, for example, I'll turn the gain up to where it is perfect and there is no bass boost. Now if I start turning up bass boost, immediately you see distortion kick in. Well, depending on how much bass boost I have, I'm going to need to turn my gain down so that I don't get distortion. I like a little bit more bass boost than that. So it's kind of a sliding scale. As one goes up, the other one should come down, and as one goes down, the other one can come up. You get done and it's too punchy, you could turn the bass boost down, but then turn the gain up if you're that, you know, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm not getting every single inch of possible gain. Yay, let's go higher. Gains are set. Pop the amplifier back down into place. We'll hook up the speaker wires behind, get this center console back together, and we'll do some listening and take you guys along and see how it sounds. And just like expected, these rear speakers are just blowing the back of your head off, so we're gonna turn them things down. That's all you can hear. All right, we'll see what that does. Still a little bit too much. And like most things in life, it's a delicate balance. That's better. Well, the bar we had to hit was sound better than the factory Bose stereo. I think we've gone way above that bar. Yeah. Yeah, that wasn't a hard bar to clear for sure. It's all done. This is what the radio looks like in the dash. As you can see, it's nice and flat. If you're planning on keeping that single DIN in your Corvette because you don't want to go and replace the whole dash, get the short chassis radio without the CD and you can keep it nice and flush looking. The subwoofer is right there behind our heads, which is giving us plenty of bass. What do you think, Fernando?
Pretty good.
You like it?
Yeah.
You happy?
Yeah, it's nice.
Got a nice little full Exelon minus the subwoofer gimmick going on in here.
Right.
As I like to say, end the show.
On to the next one, guys.
Thank you guys so much for watching. We hope you had a wonderful night as always, and we'll see you later next time.
Bye.
Bye.